People who once said they would never leave are quietly selling furniture, renewing passports, learning new tax rules, and asking one question their parents almost never asked. What if a better life is not in a bigger house, but in a different country? This is not just about beaches or cheap rent. It is about healthcare bills, burnout, safety, school pressure, housing costs, retirement fear, remote work, and the feeling that life should not require constant financial defense. These 15 countries are pulling Americans for very different reasons. And by the end, you will know which moves sound smart, which sound risky, and which ones expose uncomfortable truths about life back home. At 15, Mexico is the move Americans understand before they even research it, because it is close, familiar, and impossible to ignore. The hard fact is that Mexico has one of the largest American communities outside the United States, and official estimates have often placed the number of United States citizens living there around 1.5 million. That does not mean every American is living in a beachfront condo with a sunset view. Many are retirees, remote workers, dual nationals, students, families, and people who crossed the border because they were tired of paying American prices for a life that felt smaller every year. The appeal is brutally simple. You can stay near family in the United States, fly home faster, live in cities with private healthcare options, and stretch a fixed income in ways that are almost impossible in many American metros. The controversial part is that American money has changed parts of Mexico. In Mexico City, San Miguel de Allende, Puerto Vallarta, Mérida, and parts of Baja, locals have complained about rising rents, English-first businesses, and neighborhoods being reshaped for outsiders. So the better life comes with a warning. If you move there only because it is cheaper, you may become part of the pressure that made your own city unaffordable. The smart Americans learn Spanish, rent before buying, respect local wages, and remember that Mexico is not an escape room for burned-out Americans. It is a country with its own politics, inequality, beauty, danger, and pride. At 14, Canada sounds like the easiest answer, but that is the trap. Americans hear Canada and think clean streets, calmer politics, universal healthcare, and a culture that feels familiar without feeling identical. There is truth there. Canada has a large United States-born population, and recent Canadian data shows hundreds of thousands of United States immigrants living there. But moving to Canada is not like crossing a state line. It is a serious immigration process. Skilled workers are scored. Students need money. Employers must meet rules. Family pathways are limited to real family ties. And the cost of living in Toronto and Vancouver can shock people who thought they were leaving American housing madness behind. It offers strong institutions, public health care after eligibility, safer-feeling cities for many families, and a work culture that can feel less aggressive than the always-on American grind. The uncomfortable twist is that Canada is not cheap America. It is a high-cost country with its own housing crisis, doctor shortages in some areas, long winter, and competitive job markets. For Americans who qualify, Canada can feel like the most realistic backup plan. For those who do not, it can become a lesson in how hard it is to be an immigrant when you are used to being the passport everyone welcomes. At 13, Portugal became the symbol of the new American exit plan. For years, it was sold as sunny, safe, affordable, and gentle. Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve, Madeira, and smaller towns became magnets for retirees and remote workers. Portugal's passive income residency path helped create the image of a country where a pension, investment income, or remote salary could turn into European residency. The country also offers strong public safety, a slower pace, good food, ocean access, and a culture that often feels warm without being loud. But here is the part travel videos used to hide. Portugal's popularity created a backlash. In Lisbon and Porto, locals watched rents rise faster than wages. Some blamed foreign buyers, short-term rentals, and visa incentives for turning regular neighborhoods into investment zones. The government has already changed parts of its foreigner-friendly policy environment, and rules can keep changing. That is the lesson. Portugal is still attractive, but it is no longer a secret bargain. Americans moving there for a better life must do more than compare rent to New York or San Francisco. They must ask whether they are bringing value, learning Portuguese, and choosing communities where they can participate instead of just consume. At 12, Spain is where the fantasy becomes dangerously persuasive. It offers late dinners, walkable cities, beaches, trains, public healthcare access through legal residency, family-centered culture, and a feeling that daily life does not have to be built around exhaustion. Americans are buying more Spanish property than before, especially in higher-end markets. And Spain has become a serious option for remote workers, retirees, students, and families who want Europe without the cold stiffness they imagine elsewhere. Madrid, Valencia, Malaga, Barcelona, Seville, and the islands all sell a different version of the same promise: more life outside the house. But Spain is not a loophole. Long-term stays require the right visa, and some visas require proof of income, health coverage, and patience with paperwork. The controversy is housing. When wealthy foreign buyers enter a city where local salaries are far lower, the market bends. That is why some Spaniards love the money but resent the pressure. Americans who move there should not act shocked when locals push back. Spain is attractive because it protects quality of life. If newcomers help destroy that balance, they are not escaping the problem. They are exporting it. At 11, Costa Rica attracts Americans who are tired of noise, speed, and fear. The pitch is nature, democracy, beaches, biodiversity, friendly communities, and a famous national identity built around a simple life. For retirees, people with stable income, and remote workers, Costa Rica can feel like a reset button. It has long been known for residency options tied to pension income, guaranteed income, investment, or remote work. Many Americans like that it is in the same broad time zone as the United States, making family calls and remote work easier. The deeper reason people go is emotional. They want mornings with birds instead of traffic. They want healthcare that feels less financially terrifying. They want their kids to see nature as normal, not as a weekend luxury. But Costa Rica is not cheap in the way some people imagine. Popular beach towns can be expensive. Imported goods cost more. Roads and bureaucracy can test your patience. And locals have their own frustration with foreigners who arrive with big budgets and little humility. Costa Rica can give Americans a better life, but only if they stop expecting a tropical version of the suburbs they left behind. At 10, Panama is the quiet powerhouse of American relocation. It does not always get the same social media attention as Portugal or Mexico, but retirees have studied it for decades. The country uses the United States dollar as legal tender, which removes one anxiety for Americans living on pensions or savings. Panama City feels modern and international, while places like Boquete, Coronado, and the Highlands attract people who want a slower pace. Panama is especially famous for retiree residency, including a pension-based path that has historically been one of the most straightforward in the region for those with qualifying lifetime income. Banking, flights, private healthcare, and a large expat network make the move feel manageable. But the controversy is that Panama can feel split in two. One Panama is polished, high-rise, and built for global money. The other faces inequality, heat, infrastructure gaps, and political frustration. Americans who only see the discount menu for retirees miss the full picture. Panama rewards preparation. It punishes people who arrive thinking every foreign country exists to make retirement cheaper. At 9, Ireland is not the cheapest option, and that is why its popularity says something important. Americans are drawn by language, ancestry, culture, education, music, literature, and the emotional pull of a place that feels connected to family stories. Some Americans qualify for Irish citizenship through ancestry, which can open not just Ireland but the wider European Union. That is one reason Irish passport interest gets so much attention. For others, the route is work, study, or family. Ireland offers a strong economy, major international employers, and a society that can feel familiar enough to soften the landing. But the better life is not guaranteed. Dublin has a brutal housing shortage. Rents are high, weather is gray, healthcare access can involve waiting, and the job market rewards specific skills more than vague dreams. The controversy is that many Americans love the idea of Ireland more than the reality of Irish costs. Still, for people with the right passport claim, the right job, or the right study plan, Ireland can be one of the most powerful moves on this list because it can turn a family history into a legal future. At 8, Germany is where Americans go when they are tired of chaos and want systems that actually work. German bureaucracy can feel like a wall. The language matters. The culture can be direct. But Germany offers something many Americans crave: serious worker protections, strong public transport in many cities, lower university tuition than the United States, structured healthcare, and a belief that life should not be entirely controlled by employer panic. Berlin attracts artists and tech workers. Munich pulls engineers and corporate professionals. Hamburg, Cologne, Leipzig, and smaller cities offer different versions of stability. Germany is controversial because it challenges the American belief that high income always equals high quality of life. A person may earn less on paper, but gain vacation, healthcare security, transit, and fewer daily financial traps. But Germany is not an instant upgrade. Taxes are higher, rules are real, apartments can be hard to find, and integration takes effort. Americans who succeed there usually stop asking, "Why is Germany not like home?" and start asking, "What was home making me tolerate?" At 7, the Netherlands attracts Americans who want efficiency, bikes, English fluency, strong design, and a society that seems built for adults who do not want to live in cars. Amsterdam gets the attention, but cities like Rotterdam, Utrecht, The Hague, Eindhoven, and Groningen show why the country has become a serious option for professionals and families. The Netherlands is attractive for skilled workers, students, entrepreneurs, and people connected to international companies. It offers excellent infrastructure, strong labor protections, and a daily life design that makes American suburbia look expensive and lonely. But it is not easy. Housing is tight. Taxes are real. Dutch directness can feel rude to Americans who expect constant friendliness. And the country is having its own debate about migration, housing, and identity. The controversial truth is that many Americans say they want freedom, but what they often want is public order. Safe bike lanes, reliable trains, clean systems, and rules that make life predictable. The Netherlands offers that, but it expects newcomers to adapt. You cannot move there for social trust while acting like trust is someone else's job. At 6, France is the country Americans either romanticize or misunderstand. They picture Paris, wine, villages, fashion, and long lunches, but the real reason France belongs here is deeper. France has strong healthcare, strong worker protections, powerful food culture, good trains, and a public idea of life that is not built entirely around productivity. Americans who move there often want beauty, but they stay if they can handle paperwork, language, and a culture that does not bend just because an American arrived. Smaller cities and towns can offer a slower, richer life for retirees, artists, families, and remote workers with the right legal path. The controversy is that France protects quality of life through rules Americans sometimes complain about. Store hours, labor laws, strikes, taxes, and bureaucracy can frustrate newcomers. Yet those same systems are part of why life there can feel less disposable. France is not trying to be convenient every second. That may annoy you at first. Then one day you realize constant convenience was one of the things making American life so expensive, wasteful, and frantic. At 5, Italy is where Americans chase beauty, family rhythm, history, food, and the idea that aging does not have to mean isolation. Italy attracts retirees, remote workers, students, dual citizenship applicants, and families who want a life with more public space and less private stress. The cities are famous, but many Americans look beyond Rome, Florence, and Milan towards smaller towns, southern regions, and countryside areas where life can be slower and housing can be less extreme. Italy can also be a serious legal option for Americans with qualifying Italian ancestry, though the process can be long and document-heavy. Italy has a bureaucracy that can humble anyone. Jobs can be hard if you do not speak Italian. Wages are lower than many Americans expect. Some small towns are losing population for a reason. But the pull remains because Italy offers something the United States often prices as luxury: daily beauty. A walkable street, a real meal, a public square, a slower evening, an older neighbor who still belongs to the community. The controversy is that Americans may call it lifestyle, while Italians may call it normal life under pressure from tourism and foreign money. At 4, Greece has become a louder option because it offers sun, islands, history, lower costs than many Western European countries, and residency paths that appeal to remote workers and investors. Athens has changed rapidly, with new cafes, renovated apartments, and a growing international scene. Thessaloniki, Crete, the Peloponnese, and island communities attract different kinds of Americans, from retirees to remote workers who want Europe with a Mediterranean pace. Greece can feel like freedom if you arrive with stable outside income. Food is fresh, the sea is close, and community still matters. But the controversy is serious. Greece went through a painful debt crisis, and many locals still deal with low wages, high housing pressure in popular areas, and frustration over outsiders treating neighborhoods like lifestyle products. Digital nomads can unintentionally raise rents while not participating deeply in local life. Also, summer Greece and winter Greece are not the same. Islands can feel magical in July and isolated in January. Greece is a better life for Americans who respect that paradise is someone else's home, not a backdrop. At 3, Thailand is the country that makes American cost of living complaints sound almost embarrassing. For decades, retirees, veterans, teachers, entrepreneurs, and remote workers have looked to Thailand for warm weather, private healthcare, food, beaches, mountains, and a daily cost structure that can stretch dollars dramatically outside the most tourist-heavy zones. Bangkok is a global city. Chiang Mai has long attracted remote workers. Phuket and other coastal areas pull people who want the sea. Thailand has also developed long-stay options for higher-income foreigners, though requirements depend on category and can change. The draw is powerful: good private hospitals, rich culture, and daily convenience. But Thailand is not a fantasy with palm trees. You need the right visa, real insurance, respect for local law, and humility about language and culture. The controversy is that some foreigners treat Thailand like a cheap playground. That attitude creates resentment and bad decisions. The Americans who build good lives there usually understand that lower costs do not mean lower dignity. Thailand is affordable for many outsiders because local wages are different. That fact should create gratitude, not arrogance. At 2, Japan is the surprise choice for Americans who care less about cheap rent and more about safety, order, healthcare, transport, food, and dignity in daily life. Japan is not an easy country to immigrate to casually. Work routes, student routes, spouse routes, and long-term planning matter. The language barrier is real. Culture shock is real. But Japan offers something many Americans now crave deeply: the ability to move through public space without constant suspicion. Trains run with discipline. Convenience is high without chaos. Cities are dense but often clean and quiet. Healthcare costs can feel more predictable than in the United States once properly enrolled. And outside Tokyo's most expensive zones, many areas face aging populations and empty homes, creating a very different housing conversation than America's shortage-driven market. The controversy is that Japan is not built to flatter foreigners. It expects adaptation, patience, and respect for norms. For some Americans, that feels restrictive. For others, it feels like relief. Japan reveals a painful question. How much stress did you think was freedom, just because you were used to it? And at 1, New Zealand is the dream that is hardest to fake. Americans look at New Zealand and see safety, nature, clean landscapes, a calmer pace, and distance from the noise. It is especially attractive to families, healthcare workers, skilled professionals, outdoor people, and anyone who wants their children to grow up near mountains, water, and a less frantic culture. But New Zealand is not handing out a better life to anyone with a passport and a fantasy. Immigration is selective. Jobs matter. Skills matter. Housing can be expensive. Groceries can be costly because of geography. Flights back to the United States are long and expensive. The country is beautiful, but it is not a theme park. The reason New Zealand still ranks so high emotionally is that it represents the opposite of the trap many Americans feel. Fewer people, more nature, less noise, and a public sense that life should be livable. The controversy is that many Americans want New Zealand because it feels protected from the very pressures large countries create. But protection requires rules. If you want the benefits of a carefully managed society, you cannot be angry when that society carefully manages who gets in. So what is the real lesson? Americans are not all leaving for the same reason. Some are chasing cheaper healthcare. Some are chasing walkable cities. Some want safer schools. Some want a retirement that does not collapse under rent and medical bills. Some want politics to feel less like a daily emergency. Some are simply tired of working harder and feeling poorer. But every country on this list comes with a trade. That is the part most online escape fantasies quietly refuse to admit. Mexico gives closeness and affordability, but asks for respect. Canada gives stability, but not easy entry or cheap housing. Portugal and Spain offer lifestyle, but also housing tension. Costa Rica and Panama offer practical escape routes, but not a perfect fantasy. Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, France, Italy, Greece, Thailand, Japan, and New Zealand each prove the same uncomfortable point. A better life is not just about where you go. It is about what systems you are willing to live under, what culture you are willing to learn, and what privileges you are willing to stop taking for granted. If this made you rethink the American dream, like this video, share it with someone who keeps saying they want to leave, and comment with the one country you would seriously move to if money, fear, and paperwork were not standing in your way.